I've got a lot of faith in human ingenuity. We're sort of infinitely adaptable. We're general intelligences ourselves, don't forget. Look at what we built around us. It's incredible with our hunter-gatherer brains. Why would we stop here? Even the tools we have today, just a few years ago, that would have been unthinkable. But today we've just totally adapted to it. It's like, oh yeah, we chat with bots that are basically Turing test level, and we make omni models that can create any video. And we're kind of like, that's kind of normal. What separates the great scientists from the good scientists is not their technical capability. It's their creative capability.
After the technology is ready, how are you thinking about democratization? Is it available just to the rich? How can everyone have it? How can we make it best for the world? Demis, thanks so much for being here again. It's always great talking to you.
It's great to be here.
So Google I/O, obviously tons of announcements. What are you most excited for?
Oh, wow. It's, I think we announced a lot of really exciting things. You probably saw me pretty excited about Omni. I think this is a really interesting direction for us on world models. I've always been a big proponent of that. But obviously, I think Flash 3.5 is the big story, and integrating that into anti-gravity 2.0, I think people are going to be really pleasantly surprised. And I think it's an amazing kind of like workhorse model. And then, of course, you've got a lot more to come, with Pro.
Yeah, benchmarks are going up. Agents are here with Spark. And I think like on the consumer side, we're really starting to see like the productivity gains of AI like kicking in. Like even with Nano Banana, for example, content creators are genuinely using these tools to new tool in the toolkit to make more content, that sort of stuff. I'm curious, like looking at today with like Omni, for example, versus 3 years ago when Gemini was first released. How have your AGI timelines kind of shifted? Has it gone according to plan, or has it gone faster, slower?
I think it's gone according to plan. So a few years ago, you probably saw, maybe we even talked about in interviews, I used to say 5 to 10 years. Maybe that's 2 or 3 years ago. I think we're sort of exactly on track. And I would say my confidence interval is narrowed. So, these days I'm thinking it's 2030 plus or minus a year.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So 2030 plus or minus a year. That's soon.
Yeah, very soon.
How are you guys preparing, like internally?
Well,
at Google?
we're first of all, we've done a lot of engineering work under the hood in the last year, which you see the surface of when we announce things like this. But actually, you could almost think the whole stack had to be rewritten to be sort of AI first, model first, and now agent first.
Right.
So that's quite a big change from like normal software. And obviously there's all this huge infrastructure that serves billions of users every day at lightning speed, and that's all got to work. And I think we've made massive improvements on that over the past year, and that's why you can see all the goodness of the AI models flowing through into our product surfaces, so quickly and in such compelling ways. So I think that's big. And but yeah, in terms of AGI, I think we're sort of on track, and actually we're sort of on track from where we thought back in 2010 when we started DeepMind. People like Shane, my co-founder, was on record saying around 2028, 2030, and we thought of it as a 20-year mission, and I think we're on track for that.
What do you think the capabilities that are missing are still before we hit AGI?
So I think there's still a few things missing. I feel like we still have kind of jagged intelligences in the sense that they're amazingly good at certain things. You're seeing that with things like Omni. I think it's kind of mind-blowing. We're a little bit desensitized to all of that now, but you can think of it as sort of like Nano Banana for video, this first version. And I think content creators like yourself should have a load of fun with it. But in terms of like its understanding of physics and the way the world works, it's not perfect, but it's pretty mind-blowing if you stop and think about it. And those are all hallmarks of what we imagine an AGI to be able to do. And of course, it's going to be amazingly important for things like robotics, right, and glasses. But on the other hand, there's still a lot the systems fail at still. And you can see that in the agentic side of things. It's starting to become, I think, in the last 6 months, actually genuinely really useful for people in their daily lives. But it's still not quite fire and forget for the average, user. I think there's still some reliability and some things these systems all get stuck on. So those things need to be, consistency, continual learning. There's still some breakthroughs that are needed in that direction.
Gotcha. So this is like sort of a research problem, or?
Yes. So we have a ton of research on things like that. Also, memory is still not quite right, I would say, in any of the systems. It's a little bit brute force. Something smarter, I think, is needed there. So there's a few, long-term reasoning and planning. There's a few areas, critical areas, only a handful, that I still think need to be cracked before we would have something like AGI that we could call AGI.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool to see the personalization across the devices now.
Yes.
I think last year we were talking about this, and this year you guys are releasing it in the summer with the glasses,
Yes.
and you got the watches,
Yes.
and it connects to your phone.
Yeah, the Fitbits and all of these
incredible.
things.
So
yes.
it's slowly come together, but the memory isn't like fully there. Is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
exactly. So it's coming together. I mean, I think one of the things that was most exciting showed is the progress we've made with glasses this year compared to last year, and soon it's going to be in everyone's hands. I can't wait to have that myself. It's one of the dreams I've always had, a personal assistant that helps you with you everywhere you go and just helps you in your daily life. Get rid of mundane admin tasks, and email would be great. Dealing with my email, but it's so you have more time to do what you want in the day. And I think we're really close now to having really compelling things. And in some ways, I think this idea of a universal digital assistant, in my view, is the killer app that the form factor of glasses was always waiting for. Google, of course, has a huge long history in glasses, but I think this is the actual killer app, what we've been sort of building towards now, and we're on the cusp of, and it's very exciting. And then also integrating into all the other devices and your health data and things like this if you want to, and then Gemini being able to help you with those kinds of things.
Right. The Gemini subscription is quite compelling in that way, right? Because it really has everything in one.
Bundled into one, and that's one of the, I think, beauties and of the power of the full stack we have at Google.
Right.
From the chips to the models to the products.
Yeah. Well, jumping ahead here, I think a year ago we spoke, and you said that AI could help cure all diseases in our lifetimes.
Yes.
But since then, what are some kind of like the biggest developments you've seen in AI drug discovery, and have your timelines kind of shifted since then?
Yeah, again, I would say they've not shifted, but they've hardened, they've tightened. So I'm more sure, let's say, about those timelines now, right? I was hoping it would be in the next decade or two, we'd make these big advances in medicine. Now I'm, very sure. I wouldn't say I'm certain, but I'm very confident that is the case. Seeing the progress we made in the last year on our Gemini and for science side of things at DeepMind, but also especially at Isomorphic Labs, where we're really trying to push forward the models, the specialized models that are required to understand chemistry and biochemistry, the kinds of things you need to design drugs. And it's going amazingly well. We just raised a bunch of money to accelerate even further. And we have, excitingly now, some test compounds in preclinical stage, which is the beginning of them becoming real cures. And I think that actually will be the biggest watershed moment in AI when that happens.
I agree.
Yeah.
So when you say like cure all diseases, is it sort of one disease at a time? Are there particular diseases you think come first? Or?
Yeah, I'm meaning more like building a platform that, think of it as AlphaFold, but AlphaFold's only one small piece, but maybe like half a dozen to a dozen other AlphaFold level breakthroughs. So it's not easy. We're working on all those. Pull together into one continuous platform that goes from the target of interest, the way you think the disease is working, all the way to a lead compound that you want to test in clinical trials. So I'm talking about sort of compressing that average of 10 years it can take to do that down to months, maybe even weeks.
Wow.
Of course, there's still the clinical trial stage, and there's all the downstream stuff before you get an actual drug someone can take. That can take another 5 to 10 years. And I think AI can help with that too. But I'm really just talking about the drug discovery engine, the bit where you go from the disease profile to a potential cure that you then needs to be tested.
Right. And after
and there's no specific disease. I hope it could work on every
everything.
type of disease type.
Yeah. I actually noticed on the keynote today, it said cancers and immune disorders first.
So we're starting on those areas first, immunology, oncology, partly because obviously some of those things are so serious. It's more, the clinical side of that is quicker because they're such serious diseases. Anything you can do to help is essential there. And, I feel a real need to, I've always felt that that's what I first and most importantly wanted to do with AI.
That's really incredible work. I guess the follow-up question to that is, like, after the technology is ready, how are you thinking about democratization? Is it available just to the rich? How can everyone have it? How can we make it best for the world?
We care a lot about that at Google, obviously. All our products are used by, there's, 13 products now, billion user products, Gemini apps, 900 million. So we are really take very seriously this idea of democratizing the technology to everyone around the world in every country. And that's what Google's always done with search and YouTube and all its main products. And that's why we spend so much time on these flash level and even flashlight level, very efficient, very performant models, but that are cheap and fast and can be used everywhere. Of course, we have a big need for that ourselves internally, which is why we push that for all of our products. Right. But we also think it's the sort of thing that developers and builders are going to really enjoy too.
Okay, let's fast forward 5 years, maybe let's say, and let's say we hit AGI and we've cured some of the big diseases.
Yeah.
Where are you focusing your time? What's the next mission?
Well, there's a couple of things I think I would be thinking about. One is using the AI tools myself to help us understand my kind of overall scientific goal, which is the nature of reality, right? That's always what I've been sort of obsessed with since a kid. And really that means doing some physics and physics experiments, but with the help of AI. So that's one thing. Second thing I think is maybe I would pivot a little bit to more philosophical topics around, what it means to be human, what's special about that, how do we want society to change and adapt to this incredible transformation that is going to happen as we, start to travel to the stars, and, what does that mean about society and the human condition? So I'd like to maybe try and help out there if I can.
Speaking about human meaning, do you have any initial thoughts there? I know you're very deep in the weeds here, but have you thought about what's left for human meaning after AGI at all?
Well, I think it's all still to be written, in my view. I think the next generation, they're going to be growing up natively with these tools, just like I did with computers and programming in the first place. And then we created this world. That I can't wait to see what the students of today are going to do, growing up with these sort of tools and almost superpowers in a way, and combining that with traditional skills in math and computer science. I think that's still going to be relevant, at least as far as I can see the next 10 years, so that you can really understand how these systems work so you can take best advantage of them. And then I think amazing new things are going to be created. I've got a lot of faith in human ingenuity, where we're sort of infinitely adaptable. We're general intelligences ourselves, don't forget, right? Look at what we built around us. It's incredible with our hunter-gatherer brains. Why would we stop here? It's like we're amazing at adapting to tools. Look at the way we see even the tools we have today, these AI tools we're marveling at today. Just a few years ago, that would have been unthinkable. But today we've just totally adapted to it. It's like, we chat with bots that are basically Turing test level, and we make omni models that can create any video. And we're kind of like, that's kind of normal. Yeah. And so I think that's the good side of human adaptability. And I'm sure that will be the case going forwards too.
It's kind of the Waymo analogy I like, where you try Waymo once and you're taking a video, you're in the car and it's insane. You have a driverless car, but then you do it a second time and it's like, oh, is this kind of normal?
It's kind of normal, exactly.
It's weird that it's normal, right? And it's the same with these AI tools now.
But again, that's the sign. That's because our brains are general, and so general, even though they were evolved for a particular purpose, hunter-gathering, but we were tool-making species. And that's what separates us from the other animals. And I think that's led us to where we are today with modern civilization. I think AI is just the next step.
What human skills do you think get more valuable as AI just increasingly gets more capable?
Well, I think it's very clear certainly in the short term. It's harder to predict out, 10 years from now. But I would say in the next 5 years, it's very obvious to me that taste, design sensibility, original thinking, being able to synthesize different subjects together, I think being quite broad-minded in your knowledge and skills, I think it's going to be amazing. People who are kind of creative and technical, people like yourself, I think are going to be in an amazing position with these technical tools, but then combining it with creativity, whether that's in the arts form or the science form. I've always said that what separates the great scientists from the good scientists is not their technical capability, because if you're a professional scientist, you're obviously very good technically. It's their creative capability, their sort of taste and judgment. And I think that's going to be at the fore. Also, connecting with your audience, whether you're building a product or making a film or game. How do you really connect emotionally with the other human beings that you're making this for? That isn't going to come from the AI tools. I think that's going to come from the human creator and the human expert.
Right. So taste and judgment, and continuing to learn the AI skills needed, and combining the two.
Yes, because the deeper you understand the technology, the more you're going to be able to take advantage of it and keep at the forefront.
Right. All right, so we're almost out of time, but the one thing I want to ask you is, the news cycle is very much focused around agents and AI, but is there anything specific that you think is just been on your mind recently that is underhyped?
Well, I think I'm very excited about this new agentic era, and you can see us leaning into that. The whole of I.O. is really about that, right? With Spark and anti-gravity and the new Flash. But of course, we've also got to think about the security side of that too. That's one of the things I think we can do really well, is combine really amazing frontier capabilities, but with reliability and robustness, as well as connecting to, the ecosystem of products people already know and love. So I think that's the next phase. But I do worry about, you're seeing it a little bit with the cyber worries about some of the models, and I think that's just the beginning of some of the issues that we need to make sure we guard against, as well as getting excited about all the amazing opportunities. So I think that's playing a little bit on my mind. Maybe this is the time now to try and push some standards and maybe international cooperation.
Got it. Well, thanks so much for your time. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, lovely talking to you as always.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for doing this. Thank you.